Lovely. I will actually start with a pop quiz here. How many of you here are Gen Z? I mean, if any of you don't know it already, a Gen Z is anyone who's born between 97 and 2012. Yeah, as expected, not many hands. How many of you know Gen Zs? Office, colleagues, family, kids, some more hands go up. How many of you work with brands or work with agencies that support brands or companies that support brands for whom Gen Z is important? Relatively more hands go up. Okay, I was expecting more hands to go up actually. But lovely. I have the privilege of leading revenue for some of the most exciting verticals at Snapchat. And at Snapchat, we believe that Gen Z is absolutely the future, but they are also here and they are also now. And we at Snapchat are the authority on Gen Z. It's a very bold and powerful statement to make, but we'll talk more about that. Right, so a little bit about Gen Z, right? So I'm going to talk through a bunch of studies that Snapchat has partnered with, a lot of research, a lot of media houses. The idea behind this is that Gen Z is often talked about, very less understood, right? And the idea of the course of next 15 odd minutes is to help you demystify what Gen Z actually is and how can you actually harness the astronomical $2 trillion number that we just heard. So Gen Z, if you didn't know this already, is already the largest ever generation to exist. So if you don't know a Gen Z, I mean, I'm surprised, honestly. Gen Z today accounts for almost 25% of the workforce, which is going to expand to 50% of the workforce in 10 years. So they are all around us, right from college goers to first jobbers, some of them also early parents. And despite, probably this is the most important point on this slide, this is not the best time. We all heard about Ragini and AI, but this is at the same time, this is a very uncertain time for us to grow and step into building our careers. For most of us here who are seasoned and we know what we are doing, we know how we are navigating this. But for someone taking their first baby steps into this world, it's an era of absolute uncertainty. But 2 out of 3 are optimistic about the future. And what do you do when you're optimistic? Anyone? You spend money, right? When you think things are going to get better, you go out and you spend. That is on upskilling, that is on buying things, but whatever it is, you spend money. And that, for marketers, is the most important thing because you want to reach out to people who have the money and want to spend money. All right. Spoke about this. 25% already in the workforce, about to get to 50% in about a decade's time. I don't think anyone wants to build a brand for here and now. You want to build it for the long term, and therefore, this is the audience you want to go after. Cool. We partnered with BCG about a year and a half back or so, and the idea was to actually get into the details and the depth of Gen Z, to understand what is their true economic potential, broken down by categories, so that this is not just relevant at a surface level, but at a much, much deeper level. What we realized was even bigger than what we initially had thought of. So as of today, Gen Z direct and influence spends stands at close to $850 billion. This is all India, by the way. This number in about 10 years is expected to go up to $2 trillion, right? And very importantly, look at the share of direct spends grow. So this generation might appear inconsequential today, which it is not, because when they are influencing spends, they are also a key part of the value chain. But look at them grow in the next 5 and then the next 10 years. And if you are in any way a part of any of these categories, whether you service brands or you are a brand in any of these categories, Gen Z is already super, super sizable and relevant for you. Okay? So again, paths we have spoken of, but a very important point again here is the fact that how we reaching out to Gen Z, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the subsequent slides. But Gen Z, I mean, I'll probably just take a step back, right? I mean, I don't know what's the median age of this room, so I'll just approximate with my age. About 30 years back, when I was very, very small, and like literally just understanding what an ad really is, and I could probably make out that the show I was watching ended and an ad sort of started into play. So you can imagine how small would be. I'm not revealing my age. So yeah, back then, exposure to an ad was probably on TV, maybe radio, but it was far in between, right? So I could easily make out what is an ad. And because it was so little in terms of exposure, I ended up paying attention to it to a point where it became a blind spot, and I knew that this is an ad, and I can do everything that I need to in between, right? So from there to now, even a passive viewing had my attention. Now think about all the exposure to ad that we have. And for a generation that's growing with this exposure, ads have already become, like a blind spot. So what Gen Z wants today is not passive viewing. They want to be actively involved in every marketing conversation that you're doing. And we heard about storytelling. That's been the constant theme I have been listening to. So storytelling is extremely important, but storytelling where a Ranveer Singh is the actor is probably less important than where, a certain, I don't know, maybe a Kunal or a Sheetal is the actor is more important. Okay. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of data, a lot of numbers I've already spoken about. So I will take a short breath here, but I'll take that short breath only because we partnered with some more people. We partnered with Kantar, we partnered with ET to build out a report that does not just restrict it to the value potential of Gen Z, but actually goes down into the depth of how does Gen Z actually behave. So be it in categories like fashion, retail, e-commerce, quick commerce, food delivery, any of these verticals. If you want to know how Gen Z behaves and how Gen Z is different from millennials and others, and you want to listen to a little less of Snapchat, I'm going to pause for 5 seconds. Your camera should be out and scanning this QR code. Oh, wow. I see a lot of cameras go up. I don't know if that's because you want to listen to less of Snapchat, or is it because you actually found this interesting? Amazing. I hope it's the latter. Cool. So we talked about how this audience, how this generation is very different from the others in the sense that they do not want to get into passive viewing. But a lot of our industry metrics today, think about impressions, think about reach, think about view-through rates, click-through rates, are all built for passive viewing, right? Where you're actually viewing a content, you might not want to view it, but you're forced to view it because you don't have an option to skip it. So what we are saying is there should be a new metric in terms of how you engage with this audience, how you measure the success. And we'll tie it all to metrics that you are all familiar with. Let's get to it. But before we get there, hope this plays. It doesn't. Okay, it doesn't, so that's okay, that's fine. I can probably talk you through what that video was. So, I don't know how many of you actually have worked with Gen Zs, but a lot of times, as I said, Gen Z are misunderstood. So a lot of times we think Gen Zs have a lot of quirks, they have different work ethics, and those work ethics sometimes don't get along with how, we have grown up with, or maybe even if in our family circles, Gen Zs behave very differently from what we are used to, right? So the one common theme is Gen Zs, irrespective if they are work or outside of work, are famed to have extremely low attention spans, right? And while a lot of us could be irked with that, the one quintessential animal, I don't know if I can call fish an animal, but one quintessential being that is also irked by Gen Z is the goldfish, because congratulations to all the Gen Zs in the room. It is now proven that you have a smaller attention span than a goldfish. So, if that is the new truth, and the video was about that, it was a very, very nice video. I'll try and get access to all of you to that video as well. But if that's the new truth, how do we actually capture their attention? Right? So, the season that we are getting into, the festive, the heart of the festive season really, this fat thing that happens is there is all the more, exposure to ads that goes up. So a research says that an exposure to ad typically in a festive season goes up by anywhere from 3 to 4.5x. So when the attention is anyway tough to capture, in this deluge, how do you do that, right? So this just tells you that whatever you do on mobile, if it is a video, image, it has a very, very fast attention decay. I don't think you need any graph to tell you this. All of us sitting in the room. Do you recall, like another quick pop quiz, I love those. Do you recall what ad you saw yesterday while you were scrolling through any social media channel? Anyone? There you go, right? Maybe some of you do and are shy, but most of us do not recall. I don't see a single hand go up. Yeah? And think about it. For a Gen Z who actually does not like to see ads and not marketers, all of us somewhere are connected to marketing, and yet we do not remember this. So there is a very, very fast attention decay. Typically, what we see is that less than 2 seconds, all the social platforms will tell you this. You build for the first few seconds because that is when you're most likely to hold a viewer's attention. I'm going to just skip past this and get to the most important section. So what we say is that you should not build your ads for view-through rates or to get more reach or to get more impressions, because all of those, I mean, the next time someone tells you and says that, we have given you maybe 50 million impressions, 25 million unique reach, and a VTR of 50% on your 15-second video. Ask them, what does it really mean? Where does it lead to? Does it actually lead to a movement in brand metrics? Does it actually lead to people remembering your brand? Ask them those hard questions, because the answer in almost all the cases is going to be that shift is very, very small. And I will talk you through in a few moments a very well-known brand which, through this attention-based approach, moved the needle like anything. But let us understand this model a little bit more. So what we are saying is, instead of building for a certain duration, or instead of building for a message, yes, message story is always important, but at the same time, you build for attention. Why? Because when you pay attention to something, you remember it, right? And when you remember it, you recall it. So, again, a throwback. What is, and tell me, does a jingle, I mean, no one has to actually sing it, I'm a terrible singer myself, but does a jingle go off in your head when you hear the brand Nirma? Lovely, we have singers in the room, amazing. Surf. Yeah? Cadbury, Dairy Milk. Lovely, I love that video. So, see, and I can go on and on. Bajaj, Hero, all of these brands were built, the heart of it was a storyline, right? And they captured attention because of, absolutely because of the storyline, but because it was easy to. Now you see what happens here. What they did was, they grabbed your attention, it stayed in your memory, and therefore, when was the last time you saw any of these videos? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? But it stays with you. One mention of the brand, there you go. Now, let me flip this around. I'm going to take some new age brands, no offense. I work with a lot of those. They do fantastic work. No offense, again, but Mamaearth. Okay? Pilgrim. Aether Energy. You recall it. Do you have a similar association as you have with? No. So you know of the brand. Rapido. All of us know about it. Of course, I'm not talking about recall of the brand. I'm talking about, do you have a similar association? No. And what do you think has changed? Do you think that storytelling has changed? It has. Well, I will not take that. I mean, you still look pretty young, to your credit. Yes. Storytelling has changed. And probably it needs to, because times have changed. You know, now we have all become a lot more transactional thanks to performance marketing coming into the world. We need the here and now. So probably that needs to change. But also what has changed? Yes, bang on. Do you know what is the length? Yeah? Yes. So do you know what is the duration of that Kuch Khas Hai Zindagi Mein Dairy Milk ad? 1 minute, yeah. It's the full version. It's a little over 1 minute, right? And you even today will go and watch the entire thing. Back then you watched it over and over because you know Dairy Milk bought X spots on TV. You watched it over and over and over because your attention span was much higher. You did not have Instagram, you did not have YouTube, you did not have a Netflix that you had to pick up and you were compelled to watch it. But this is the new reality we live in, right? And we have to, therefore, marketing has to change. So if it has changed, it's probably changed for good. But therefore, in this new reality that we live in, how does measurement need to change? Because if we are still measuring the old way, where we are saying how many people we have reached, and that defines my success, I'm not actually succeeding. Okay? So before I move on, what this second side tells you is that what viewable but not viewed means is that if an impression was delivered, which means that the ad was viewable, it was supposed to be viewed, but it wasn't actually consumed. The second side, the yellow side, is that the ad was delivered and it was consumed. So for whatever duration, it could be 1 second, 2 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 minutes. But if it is actually viewed, look at the lift go up. It goes from 1% up to 7%. So basically, what you have to make sure in today's time is not just impressions. You have to make sure that your message is consumed. Hold on to that thought, and we'll talk more about it as we go along. Okay. I love, anyone who probably would know me would know that I love maths, and I can talk about this chart in detail, but I know a lot of you probably would not appreciate it, so I'll not go into the depth, so I'll keep it super simple. This chart on the left tells you against average attention time on the left, how does attention time correlate to uplift in terms of recall, right? The same thing on the right is attention is replaced by view-through rates, okay? So everything else is the same. The only change is if you look at attention time spent actually consuming the ad versus how much time actually I have passively consumed, right? So it's intent versus passive consumption. R square, I mean, if you run regression analysis, I'm sorry, I'll not say that term again, but R square, the one you see here, is basically just a predictor of how well this entire, so how well the outcome represents the estimate that you had at the beginning of a test, and how repeatable, how predictable it is. So if you were to do the same test again, will it turn out the same way? Okay? So what this tells you is that obviously if you look at the dotted lines, as generally speaking, as you go up in terms of attention span, you see that your recall is going up. Okay? That the same dotted line is more or less like flattish. That change is not as drastic. But what I want you to focus on is the R square. The R square here is 0.88. Don't get confused by R square regression or the graph. What it means is, I do this 100 times. 90 times, I'm going to get the same result here, right? So there is a lot of predictability. So as a brand, if you start focusing on attention, there is a 90% likelihood that you are going to get an uplift in recall. That same likelihood is only 19% there, right? So that's how it has changed, because now we're not attentive enough as individuals, as consumers, as, like maybe marketers as well. So therefore, we need to build for attention. Well, yeah.
You are equating attention here to viewability.
Correct. So how much time do I actually end up consuming the ad? So viewing it, not viewing it like just because I get a YouTube non-skip, I'm forced to watch it for 6 seconds or 15 seconds. But that's not the same. I'm sorry, I mean, YouTube was just an example. Actually, I'm viewing an ad because I'm forced to, right? What I'm saying is I want to view an ad and therefore I'm viewing it. That's the difference between the two. Okay, again, I'll probably not spend too much time on this because it'll get too in-depth. The only thing I'll say here is it's not that you always have to think about attention. So if you are a brand that's more intent on driving recall for yourself, maybe just having a 1-2 second exposure is good enough, right? So 1-2 second of active exposure is good enough to drive that recall. But if you want to move the needle on brand favorability, right, intent to actually make a purchase or any action which are slightly more lower funnel than just driving recall, you need more attention time. And this is pretty obvious, right? There's no rocket science, but it's just data that's proving that.
What's the opportunity cost of increasing attention with price? And where is the marginal curve hit?
Correct. So I'll be happy to catch up with you on that because that's a super in-depth discussion and do have an answer for that, but I'll probably spend some time later on that one. All right. So I'm getting to how to solve for this now, right? And this is not a Snapchat pitch. As much as I would love for this to be, this is not. How do you capture this is, actually let me go to this slide first. So what do you need to do differently? What you need to do differently is because if I am passively viewing something, clearly I'm not viewing it, right? I'm viewing it for the sake of viewing it. But the moment you make me a hero, or whatever, like a heroine, whatever, it's really gender neutral at this point, but if you make me the center point, suddenly all my interest is up there, right? So we had, the moment I came here, I was said that, the younger generation, I would take that son, daughter to mean younger generation in general. They are addicted to Snapchat filters. Why? Because there you are at the front and center and the heart of it. So that's the difference, right? So you have to design in a way that you become the, you become just the communicator as a brand. You're not the storyteller. You let the user consume the story the way they want to be. Again, in the interest of keeping it relevant for everyone, I did not put an example here, but if you are familiar with Snapchat, you know what I'm talking about. It's all about the AR lenses and filters, where you let the user consume the information the way they want to be. You just have a Uber storyline, and the user is at the heart of it. And I'll go back to this. The moment you do that, look at what happens. Without Snap, the attention is whatever it is. I'm not talking about absolute numbers, but the moment you have Snap in the mix, just because it is immersive, just because it lets a user play the role of an active influencer and a hero, that goes up by 22%. And it's not rocket science. I'm also going to skip this and come to this because my time is up. There's a big glaring red I see there. So Mentos, this is the brand I was telling you about. Anyone in the room that does not know Mentos? No. I mean, bring a 15-year-old as well, right? They would know Mentos pretty much, I'm sure. So we did a similar campaign with Mentos, focused on attention, going big in terms of, rejigging their entire marketing mix and getting Snapchat lenses into the picture. And the results are there to see, right? We're talking about 4x higher attention compared to the benchmarks that we have with Lumen. Lumen is our attention partner globally. So yeah, so that's on the attention front compared to just videos. If you add a lens, what happens? In terms of brand awareness, we're talking about Mentos brand awareness. There is 6 points lift, and in terms of ad awareness, which is always relatively easier to drive, there's still a 18 points awareness lift. Yep. With that, I'll stop. Thank you so much. I'm around in case you have questions. Find me. I would be happy to answer those. Thank you.